In the same way that I handle reviews, well, at least the intros of games, I've got this Survivors of Suicide guide, a little handbook thing, and I've been sort of working my way through it. I got a little past halfway, and immediately, that internal monologue starts up with, yeah, but no, wait, kinds of responses to it. Now, honestly, this is meant, everybody's different, and every situation is different, and all that, and I understand all that, and I understand no little pamphlet is gonna solve all the answers to me, but some of the things just were so strikingly wrong to my experiences, granted, in my recent experiences, which, maybe in the light of 6 months, a year, I'll feel different. Maybe this will all make more sense to me. But like with Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff like that, I feel like there's a little bit too much, well, this is just how it is, folks. And some of it I really want to dissect and look at. And like I said, I was kind of planning on doing this after reading my way through it, but I kind of can't make my way through it without, and I'm going to forget some of my thoughts as I go. So I want to start capturing this. So someone you love has ended their own life and yours is forever changed. Yeah, I mean, I guess, and then they discuss why they use the word survivor, fine, as opposed to suicide griever and stuff like that. Some of the suicide is different. On top of all the grief that people experience after a conventional death, you must walk a gauntlet of guilt, confusion, and emotional turmoil that is in many ways unique to survivors of suicide. The funny thing for me is, it took me a while to accept what seemed the obvious, right? But the night the police were there, the first thing, my first thought before they even came was, oh fuck, this was COVID. It hit her brain and fucking shut her down. That's kind of ignoring some obvious physical signs that I should have recognized, the blackened fingers, the blackened lips, that go with poison. But that was just my assumption. And then after giving a lot of information about her, about me, etc., where I'm kind of defensive because I'm like, this is a weird death. Kind of out of nowhere, what the fuck happened? They bring up the drugs, and I'm like, no, I didn't know anything about this shit. And then, I think I did a little teeny bit of research online while they were still here, and my initial impression was that she was trying to do them, use these things for some kind of weight control to try to prevent herself from gaining weight. It didn't really make sense because one of them actually would cause weight gain, and it just, one would have caused weight loss, but it was just a weird combination. And it actually took me about a day to settle in what, even though a lot of their questions had been pointed about suicidal thoughts and stuff like that, that's what they were settling on. And as soon as I became clear that that's what it was, I actually felt a relief that that's what it was. That, this was something where she had made the obvious logical choice. One that, we both expressed to one another as in, look, life is pointless, why the fuck, why stay living, and from my point, it's that I know that I'm incapable of suicide. From her point, it was fear that she would fuck it up and not end up in a worse situation because of attempting it. Even if that worse situation was just like my first ex-wife, which was getting her stomach pumped and being put in a mental hospital for 6 months or whatever. So, not that long. But that was incredibly traumatic, and the idea that it was just COVID striking, well, there I really would take some blame, because I was riskier than she was. If it was her trying to fuck around with something for weight loss or something along those lines, yeah, there again, I felt maybe not so much guilt, but although probably a little bit, but she was actually underweight by, that was never the solution I suggested. Eating less, that was the solution she chose. I suggested exercising more to tone. And the bigger thing there was this feeling of that she was so afraid to tell me that she was using these drugs to try to reduce her weight. That, like, man, yeah, just the sign of that I couldn't be trusted. And once I realized, once I start accepting that it's suicide, yes, she couldn't trust me, because legally I would get in trouble if I knew that she was trying and just let her. It would be a risk. It would be a risk I couldn't take. So yeah, suicide is different, but I certainly feel less guilt than I would out of anything else. How long will it take to get over it? Yeah, you may never get over it, but don't let that discourage you, blah, blah, blah. I won't. I haven't gotten over other deaths and other means of people leaving me. I never will. They will always be with me. Love is forever, and you just, okay, so they go into these things, guilt, and again, I feel some, but the guilt that I feel is more that, that we didn't really work together the way that either of us wanted, that neither of us brought the happiness and joy, and that may have deteriorated anyway, even if we had. From my prior experiences, it doesn't last forever. Whatever warmth and joy you can bring into someone's life, it may fuel them for a few months, a few years, but that's it. 4 or 5 years maybe. Stigma means nothing to me. I mean, honestly. Anger. This is a hard one. I don't think so. I don't think I feel... I mean, there's a little bit of the, oh fuck, why did you, why couldn't you have stuck around for me? But, no, not much. Disconnection. It's easier to retain, with disease or accident, it's easier to retain happy memories. Again, I don't feel that at all. I don't feel any of the... I think I'd feel the same if she got run over by a truck, it would be the, I miss what I had, it wasn't sufficient, but it's all that I had, and I don't expect to ever get even that much again. Okay. The next one, the emotional roller coaster. coping with a loved one's suicide, you must confront it, okay? If you attempt to ignore it, sweep it under the carpet, you may be delaying even deeper pain. This is something I fear, actually. So, my way of dealing with things, I mean, I poke the pain, there's no question of that, but there's no way of coping with it. The only thing is that it gets covered up with other routines. So I'm not sure what else there is to look about this. But again, I don't see it as fundamentally different from how I've had to deal with other losses that I've had. Time heals, but time alone cannot heal the suicide survivor. Why? I don't know. I'm not sure what they're getting at there. And again, I may be, I'm a peculiar instance in all cases, and certainly in this I think so. You may backslide from time to time. Yeah, I may backslide from time to time with any sadness. No biggie there. That's, you will encounter painful reminders unexpectedly. Yeah. And they're talking about like a song or something like that. Sure. I mean, that's grief, man. Friends and relatives may not offer the support you need. Well, I don't fucking have any, essentially. I mean, I really don't. Some people have reached out. I have family. Family is not useful to me. The only thing that could help me is someone close enough that, I can just walk over and talk to them and feel comfortable, and not an hour-long walk or whatever. And ideally, someone living with me that could give me that kind of support. Otherwise, I am likely to do what I do, which is bury myself. Now, they say lean on people who are ready, willing, and able to help you, and try to forgive those who can't. It's me. I'm the one who can't. I can't make those relationships easily. People may make insensitive remarks. Yeah, like me. I mean, I'm the one who's going to fucking crack the nasty jokes here. Yeah, I'm not worried about anyone there at all. Your fear of other people's judgment may haunt you needlessly now. I mean, the night of, I was afraid the cops would arrest me for murdering her or something, just because I had no idea why she was dead. And when it came up to the drugs, as opposed to obviously like COVID or something, I really went into kind of panic mode in my head. But that's it. Others may tire of talking about it long before you do. That's why I'm on video, right? I mean, the few times that there's a couple of guys from the bar who reached out to me, and a couple of my bartenders, and I went and talked to them. But I don't touch on this. It's just being around people that's the important thing, I don't, that's so new and everything. I have no particular desire to delve into this with anyone. I give it on the video, and that allows you guys to take it on your own desires. To me, the camera is as much of the release of speaking to the camera is as much as I would get talking to a psychologist, or and I kind of actually don't really want to burden friends in person with this. I don't want to break down. I don't want to burden people at work with it. I just don't. Because this is sufficient. You may feel bad about feeling good. No. Not at all. Whatever pleasure I can take, I am so greedy with at this point. Holidays, birthdays, and the anniversary of suicide are often difficult. Like, I'll remember them. I mean, I will vaguely, but I didn't remember her birthday normally. Holidays, strangely enough, we barely touched on celebrating holidays or birthdays for that matter together. That's not to say, we avoided them or anything. It's just they didn't have meaning to us. That's different from my other relationships where they didn't have much meaning, but they had some. I would go down to the Goodwill and buy my first ex-wife, some kind of silly little trinket or something that I thought would make her happy. There was nothing like that. We did not celebrate anything at all. So that's, that's not going to be more than the depression I was feeling already around holidays, say, or whatever. New milestones may bring feelings of guilt. No. No. New milestones will help me not dwell on my misery and my past. I'll still dwell on them, just not as much. You may entertain thoughts of suicide yourself. Well, yeah, but no more than I did before. I know I'm not capable. Write yourself a script. How to deal with questions and whatnot. I don't really need that. Of course, being me, instead of they took their own life or a straightforward they died by suicide, I'd be like, ah, she offed herself. I get that from my mom. Let's see. So yeah, talking about the, hey, are you, the risk of dying of suicide is greater for those who come from a family in which suicide has been attempted. This may be due to the fact that our loved one's death has made the very idea of suicide more real in our lives. I mean, I'm more convinced she found something that worked, but, you know, they'll probably make it illegal before I'm free enough of my burdens to maybe see that I could do this. However, you must balance your fear of this with the knowledge that suicide is most often preceded by a history of clinical depression. Well, that's something I would have if I went to a clinician. If you share this trait with your loved one, then you have a reason to seek professional help. No, they don't help me. However, you now know better than anyone the pain and destruction that suicide causes in the lives of those we love. Yeah, I mean, the question there comes to, once there's no one left, you know, would I have the guts then? Probably still not. I am a real coward. The very fact that you're reading a book like this shows your desire to heal and live. Not really. I like reading. Again, I also like critiquing. Explaining suicide to children, I'm going to leave that alone. I think, above all, lies should not be used to shelter children from reality. I was young when two of my uncles committed suicide. I don't think my parents hid that in any way or anything. I wasn't all that young. I already understood suicide and had considered it. Shock and grief. It's like a bad dream. It's like walking in quicksand, you know. Let me go through this a little bit. Feels like a hole out of which we could not possibly climb. No, I don't feel that. The first day or two, it was bad. It was real bad. And there's still some degree of, geez, there's things. I mean, one of the things is it triggered me to seeking help for some things that I've been avoiding, in terms of repairs or whatever. But now I see that maybe I'm even less likely to bother, you know, and that's kind of one of that. Do I have to hold it together for anyone? No, hell no. I don't have anyone. It's never too early to start healing. Find a support group or qualified therapist. Okay. A therapist, I don't trust the rapist, okay? I just don't. They have been so wrong about everything and so unable to understand, and maybe there are certain, you know, maybe I could go to one who specializes in autistic spectrum or something like that and maybe find something useful there, but in general I doubt it. But finding a support group, that might be helpful. Then again, it might just be dwelling on the pain in a way that I don't need. Guard your physical health. Shock erodes your body's natural resistance to disease. You're not getting enough sleep and nutrition. Certainly getting enough sleep. I am cutting back a little on food, but that's actually sort of more of a that's more a matter of I was eating too much, putting on weight. I'm hoping to lose some of that weight, and the main reason is that my wife and I had a regular evening meal, which is a little unnatural to me. My normal way of dealing was kind of just to eat when I wanted to. But I liked the emotional and psychological aspects of sharing that meal together. The problem is it was very hard for me not to eat when I wanted to beforehand. So I would often be eating, and it was a heavier meal than I usually, would make for myself. So it was an issue. I wasn't eating that much more than she was, in my opinion, but my body's slowed down tremendously is the big thing. Where I could afford that kind of extra food before, I really can't anymore. Stages of grief. Okay, so this is something I really like because I looked these up and before I started reading this, and out of curiousness of what I was going through, etc. And I find them strange because I've been through this shit before to some extent. Shock, the days immediately afterwards. Yeah, I mean, I felt that for a couple of days, no doubt, no question. And denial. It's common to feel a sense of impossibility or that it's all a bad dream. I have not felt that here. Not this time. When my first ex left me, or kicked me out, I would wake up and I would be, oh fuck, this is my life. Realizing what had happened, what had transpired, how my life had changed. And that felt very, very much like I wasn't really accepting it. Here, I'll hear a noise and sometimes think it was her, and then immediately switch over to, oh fuck, what the hell is that? Is there someone on my porch or something, maybe dropping a package off or whatever? Because I'm not, but it's very, very much, it's very much not that sort of denial situation, and I don't think that's happening to me at all. Guilt. Okay, yeah, I felt a lot of guilt before I realized it was suicide. Once that started becoming apparent, I largely felt almost none. That's not to say that I feel guilt for some things, but not for her dying. I feel guilt for her for not having as much happiness with her as I have had in other relationships that I had. I felt guilt for not hugging her and comforting her as she was dying, even without knowing, just my snappishness, the way that I really don't, I really never put that kind of, and it's part of the same thing really. I've become colder than I used to be in ways that I think make me kind of ineligible to be someone's lover anymore. Sadness. Yeah, I have sadness. More acutely with reminders and special occasions. Yeah, when I see a squirrel and I'm sad because I can't point it to her or talk to her about it afterwards. I went and saw the bunnies and I couldn't say anything. Everything, and I've been through this before, where it's like, I go out into the world on a walk or something, and now that I'm used to the last couple relationships at least, bringing back these images of what I experienced, it's very painful not to be able to do that anymore. Anger towards the person you've lost. I don't think so. I don't think so. Not much. Uh, Maybe a little that, like me, she didn't try harder, but you know, we came to our equilibrium state, and it wasn't good enough, and life hadn't been good enough for her before we met. So I I don't feel much of that. Acceptance. This is the mourner's goal, to accept this tragic event as something that could not have been prevented, probably not, and cannot be changed, certainly not. Uh, I mean, I feel like that was almost immediate. The other things, but I can't leave it behind either. It's there always. Everything's there always in my life. Every pain I've caused, every joy I've brought, it's all there. Uh, Let me check my time and probably run to the restroom. Well, definitely needed to change batteries. I gotta tell you, my fucking back is hurting. I said this on the game video, but I took a walk, and it's really achy now. Probably from wearing a coat, bigger coat. I haven't been wearing one recently, but I switched shirts. Mine was getting too dirty. Okay, why did they do it? So this is actually an interesting part to me. In particular because they have this thing, a theory, the accumulation of pain. This author's observation, suicidal depression is pain that seems to accumulate from many experiences. While most people find ways to cope with life's common difficulties, the suicidal person, while seeming to move past each setback, loss, and misfortune, continues to carry pain from each trauma with them throughout their lives. With each new hurt, both great and small, a little more pain is added to this tragic cargo until it becomes unbearable. I don't know for her. I honestly don't. But let's consider me a suicidal person, because in a lot of ways I hold that same sort of depressive situation. And again, I don't really think so. I feel like the pains that I've suffered in the past exist. Like I said, it's all here. All the pain, all the joy, everything. There's no way to completely eliminate all that stuff. But it's not like I look at this and am thinking, oh God, there's just this accumulation of different bad events. It's that the overall of life, as I've understood it from the age of at least puberty, a little before that even, when my memory starts really being contiguous, felt like it wasn't worthwhile. There wasn't anything great there. And while there were periods, very brief, where there was real happiness in my life, even those were obviously transitory. I mean, I can remember even at the time, I knew that they were transitory, and that the overall burden of being alive was just not a good thing, right? I can't tell you for sure at all what keeps me going in terms of, like, I label it as cowardice, but I'm not sure that's entirely it. There was one moment in my life where I had an option in my own head to let myself die, where it was welcoming, and I'm not sure how I chose not to even, I mean, it was a very strange situation, and it was, it was like the dream the day before my wife died. And it was one of those mystical experiences that I don't have a lot of ability to dissect and make full sense out of. And in each case, there was power there. I know some of you are Jesus freaks, and you're going to be like, "Oh, it was God. It was the Jesus coming down to save you." No, don't impose your religion on me. I won't impose mine on you. You don't want me to impose mine on you. If I ever decide to do that, the world will be a much worse place. And I have reasons for the faith I have, and some of them are tied to these elements. Let's just pretend that they're purely psychological artifacts. They touch into a couple of things. Condition versus the catalyst. Mistaking isolated events for the cause of the suicide. I absolutely do not here, right? I mean, she bought those drugs more than a year before she used them. I think the catalyst may have been, I don't know if they expire, it may have been an expiration and not wanting to spend another $50-100 if she decided to try again, to try to go through with it again. But this was entirely a conscious decision made on the logical examination of what life is like, what level of misery you're likely to expect over the rest of your life as it declines. I mean, she was 34. By that age, if you haven't had enough of a taste of that true zest and love, I was lucky enough to have it. I don't think she ever did. I couldn't give that to her. I was too cold by that point. If you can't taste that by that point, it's not going to happen. Stop fooling yourself. And just like I'm almost certain that I was just very lucky for, a few years, a few years at best. And that kind of luck, that's not going to happen again. I'm not the person I was then. The person I was then, first of all, I wasn't the person I was then when I was younger, like in high school or whatever. But I ran into a couple of very magical people. And that managed to get me onto a track where I could socialize with others in a way that, is difficult for me. Find people with similar interests who were linked by a bridge. The kind of person I think I've talked about before. And the problem there is not only are they that, maybe 1/10 of 1% or less of people that I can cope with who have at least some edge case surrounding interest in similar things and have the capacity to interact on levels that I like. But they also happen to be this very rare type who has those interests and can connect me with other people of that sort. So that 1/10 of 1% is just out of, the overall population of how many people I can deal with. For finding a bridge, that's probably the rarest type. The next rarest thing would be someone that I'm going to be physically physically attracted to and emotionally compatible with, to be able to live with and just deal with. And we're talking about, tiny slices in both cases. So the chance of finding any one of these that works for me, there are bridges who won't work for me, and that's fine too. Anyway, So they look at the conditions that may cause that. What are they saying? The condition. Okay, the condition of being suicidal in general, as opposed to the immediate effect. So for me, you know, I feel sick. I wish I could die. You know, if I have a cold. I mean, I get a bad cold, I want to die. Uh, I find myself, you know, unable to get groceries for a couple weeks. I remember this happening to me in Eugene. I want to die. You know, I mean, it's just a matter that the the overall logical judgment for me is to be dead. The question is the misery high enough that I can put aside some of the stupid things that are holding me to this planet? So I completely get this. Emotional illness. Up to 70% of people who die by suicide may suffer from affective illness, such as major depression or bipolar disorder. Probably. I mean, I've been depressed my whole life. You know, I mean, and in various different forms. I don't think I'm ever particularly not depressed. It's my natural state. And again, that's, you know, that kind of goes with life is meaningless, right? If life is meaningless, why shouldn't you be depressed by it? On the other hand, I believe that is really a life, you know, a logical conclusion. That if it's not, it should fucking reveal itself, and it hasn't through love, it hasn't through a lot of things. Prior attempts, often disguised as reckless behavior. Yeah, I don't know if she had tried any before. She certainly cut, but I don't think that counted. She was cutting just, you know, because people do that. That was before I met her. And for me, have I made any? Yeah, you know, I may have gotten so drunk a couple of times that counts, and she may have done the same, but that's about it. Morbid thoughts, hell yeah, man. Comfortable with the idea of death, they're convinced a dark fate awaits them. Yeah, and you know, I have a revulsion to death though as well, which is kind of weird. Like, I can't touch a dead body. Not just people, animals, stuff like that. It really bugs me. Hypersensitivity to pain. Exhibit disproportionate emotional reactions to problems and hardships, sometimes to the hardships of others. So, I don't know. I certainly have a tremendous empathy with others' pain, one that I have to seal off. And that was one of the first steps of coldness that I had, was when I went to New York City and I saw just the poverty living in the subway tunnels, and felt this desire to help everyone and knew that I couldn't, and that kind of closed something off and said I can't help anyone to some extent. But I mean, we're built to operate in small packs, not in big cities. And so the reactions that we get when faced with this kind of misery directly is this desire to help. And we have to kind of squelch that away if we're not in a small community, a very small community. I mean, those small packs are really small. Okay. There's a little sidebar here. Is suicide a choice? Choice implies that a suicidal person can reasonably look at alternatives and select among them. If they could rationally choose, it would not be suicide. I say bullshit on that. I say bullshit. Clearly, there have to be ways of weighing, my life will be more miserable, I will suffer more over time than I will gain joy. I mean, to me, that's absolutely fucking reasonable. And so I I refuse that. Yeah. Okay, a chronic need for control. We're jumping back out of the sidebar here. Many people who go on to die by suicide exhibit an obsessive need for control. Maybe for both of us. Maybe for both of us. You may ask yourself about, how much of a control freak I am, and this relates to the OCD type thing. I am. I need to control everything, but I'm willing to block certain pieces off and just avoid them. But when I saw the amount of materials she was retaining, like every bank statement and stuff like that, the way she neatened things up, again, there were compromises made to deal with me, but obviously that was causing her difficulty, to tell you the truth. Suicide is rarely a sudden occurrence. It's the result of a long, debilitating breakdown of an individual's emotional health. Or an acceptance, in her case, that she had a way that seemed likely. And in my case, it would be perhaps finding the courage, I mean, it's a very similar sort of thing. It's like, there are some of us who really don't want to be here, okay? We never did. We never asked to be here. We never saw the payoff, and we never will. And I would not call that a breakdown of emotional health. I would say that we're simply not able to find the kind of pleasure that outweighs the misery of existence in general. Suicidal mind. Attempting to decipher precisely the thoughts of the suicide victim is like trying to understand a foreign language. No, it seems far too natural to me. What I don't understand is the non-suicidal mind, okay? I understand my fear, at least I have a grasp on that. My unwillingness to go forward. I cannot comprehend a person who would not consider dying to avoid the misery of life. And I grew up, with people who I think, both my parents, I think, were rational people in the sense that, they understood that suicide was always an option. It's always a way out. Now, based on the accounts of those who have attempted suicide and lived to tell about it, we know the primary goal of suicide is not to end life, but to end pain. The two are the same. Life is pain. I mean, the misery is there. It's the balance, right? It's making that equation and looking at it and seeing the balance and saying, you know what? I just don't enjoy it enough. There aren't enough things. And yeah. And as more and more things become harder and harder as you get older, it becomes more and more reasonable. People in the grips of a suicidal depression are battling an emotional agony, which is so severe to make dying less objectionable alternative than living. Yeah, but that agony is life. One likened the feeling of being at the bottom of a deep, dark hole, and rather than fighting to get out, wanting to burrow deeper. I don't see that at all. I see it as being alive and realizing that it's a decline. There may be an increase at some point, but there's a decline. Humans aren't biologically meant to live as long as we do. One of the more painful emotions felt by survivors comes when we try to empathize with the severity of this pain. We try to envision what we would have to feel to make the same choice. And when we imagine our loved one in that kind of pain, it's almost too much to even consider. No, I feel it. I'm sure of that. But again, this is written You know, I mean, it feels to me so alien to not consider suicide as at least, you know, a reasonable option, is I guess the problem. But there's a flaw in this thought process. You are imagining what suicidal depression looks like through your eyes, through the eyes of a rational, healthy mind. Gee, thanks, folks. The suicidal person has a distorted view of the world. Problems that seem solvable to us seem impossible to them. Really now? Okay, how are you going to prevent me from aging? How are you going to prevent me from getting bored with the daily routine? I mean, these are not, right? Drugs might work, and you know, that's why we have an opioid epidemic, right? Because some people can't face the reality, and they kill themselves more slowly or whatever. That's my choice. It's not a good one. In fact, it's not uncommon. Let's see. Pain is amplified beyond reason, and death appears to offer the only possible relief. It's not uncommon for depressed patients to stop taking an antidepressant as soon as its beneficial effects start to kick in. Yes. Let's keep going here. This may be caused by a fear of drug dependency, no, but some theorize it comes from a fear of having to face the world now that a tool for doing so has been provided. No. No. It's a fear of being deluded away from what is obvious, of having those emotions dampened, of having your reality taken away just a little bit. That is so much worse than choosing to die on your own terms. Dying a little bit at a time, that's the hell of it all, isn't it? The disease is preferable to the cure. Yeah, I don't want to join your fucking world, okay? I never wanted it. Instead of being a last resort, the severely depressed person may view suicide as a plausible plan B. No, I see it as the plan A, but I don't have the fortitude, and I can't cause that pain. It is this skewed vision that once caused someone to wisely describe suicide as a permanent solution to a temporary problem. No, it is a potential solution to a permanent problem. The problem is permanent. It's real. Your little drugs that you wanna make me, you know, falsify my existence with, that isn't the solution. That's hiding. That's the same as the opioids. Okay? Don't give me that shit. All right. You can see why this isn't going to work for me. Suicide notes, when present, can mislead more than they inform by looking for answers. In a suicide note, we assume the victim fully understood everything that was happening, which may not be the case. Yeah, I mean, her life was her suicide note. Mine is mine, but I just can't punctuate it. Chase the why. It's okay to want to understand as much about your loved one's suicide as possible. Seeking these answers is a necessary part of your grief. Some people dissect the circumstances of suicide with zeal as of a detective. Examine and re-examine as much as little as you need to. Yeah, you know, I was doing this, and I still am. I'm curious about things, you know. I feel like I've gotten most of the answers. The fact that she bought it long ago, I would like to know the expiration date on those drugs. That's something I would really like to know. Because if she was right around the expiration date of one or both of them, I think that would be enough of a trigger. Not wanting to keep having to buy something like that and go through it. Once you've exhausted your deductive abilities, can you let go of the why? This will come a time when you will hopefully accept a satisfying explanation will not exist. Once you can let go of the why, you take a great step towards acceptance. Yeah, I get the why. I'm just curious about some of the surrounding reasons. Okay, they've got a series of case studies here, some of which I found fun. The logical suicide. A woman of 65 battling cancer and suffering great pain. She kills herself with an overdose. But This seems like a logical act, except that 40 years earlier, while she was still young and physically fit, she sank into a deep depression triggered by a canceled luncheon appointment and threatened to throw herself off the balcony of a hotel room. Is suicide for some a tendency that is built in, an inevitable fate, or was she suffering from a recurrent, undiagnosed and untreated depression? Or is it always just a comfortable option? You know? One which, I mean, that canceled luncheon appointment, that sounds like me. Oh shit, something little went wrong, and you know what? Fucking hell. And making a threat is one thing, you know, especially when you're young and your mind works very differently. 40 years earlier, 25, I was a violent mess at 25. That was kind of the roughest period of my life in terms of, and most beautiful at the same time. But yeah. The man who had it all, an enormously successful businessman, killed himself. He never got enough attention for his accomplishments or something like that. I liked that first one. Let me keep looking at some of these others. Okay. Pain is a heavy suitcase carrying her whole life. When something bad happened, she wrote, it was like a wheel had fallen off and then a buckle would break, and then the handle. Yeah, you know, I don't see that accumulation theory as applying to me, or whatever. The Vengeful Survivor, I liked this one. Attended a local support group and seemed to have a harder time coping than any of us, despite the fact that 5 years had passed since her son's suicide. She spoke to her son as one might, of her son, as one might speak of a martyred saint, refusing to consider even briefly that her son bore any responsibility for his suicide. Instead, she focused on a list of culprits whom she felt to blame, and then she ends up killing herself. You know, she probably was accepting that she probably was a culprit. And no, I accept that there's blame from beyond the victim, which this does not. A bunch of little facts here. This one's interesting. Male suicides outnumber female by 4 to 1. However, 3 times as many women attempt suicide. That makes perfect sense to me, to tell you the truth. Males are more likely, they put the reason for this, maybe tendency toward greater aggressiveness. Males are more likely to use something other than poison, and poison is especially risky, and many of the poisons are controlled. And honestly, females have a harder time, I think, in general. Just looking through some of these, 15% of all fatal traffic accidents may be suicides. You know, man. All right. Let me take a little pause, charge up the battery, and rest a bit, because my voice is going. Okay, we're going to have to lie on the floor again, because this camera eats energy too much. So, let's see what we can get. Alright, battling guilt. Guilt is the one negative emotion that seems to be universal to all survivors of suicide. Well, very little. And overcoming it is perhaps our greatest obstacle. It's also a false accusation. You're not responsible for your loved one's suicide in any way, shape, or form. Bullshit. We all influence and affect one another, and I just don't buy it. I know what they're trying to do. People blame themselves way too much, but that doesn't mean there's no blame, right? I mean, like a relationship that ends, there's blame to go around. Could I have made her life better enough in some way? It's possible. Uh, it is definitely possible. I think, and maybe enough that you know, um, it's hard for me to say this because I'm not sure I honestly believe it. So, for example, could someone make my life ever better enough that suicide wouldn't seem the most logical option? Forget about my fear, the fear of harming others, etc. Um, they could, so that it's no longer, something that enters my mind. But there's going to be pain, there's going to be troubled spots, and I honestly don't think that the way that I feel could be overcome. I may not know, it may be possible. It could be possible that they slip me drugs, that make my mind work like all the other little drones. There's a lot of things that could happen. I'm not completely willing to dismiss it. It's also possible that they could, carve out and make my brain work differently just through experience. I know that can happen. That's a more natural way, but again, it's sort of creating a different person out of me, and is that significantly different? I don't know. I don't want to think too much along those lines. But I am certain that drugs that are meant to reduce what has always been the logical answer are suspect at the very least. I've seen the effects of some on some people. I am not impressed with what they did to them. We're not talking about lobotomies here. We're not talking about things that completely remove everything, but it kills the spark that is the only thing that's worth having, regardless of whether that spark means that you're going to die a little quicker. Okay. One of the most unusual aspects of survivor guilt is that it's usually a solo trip. Each survivor tends to blame primarily themselves. Then they make some argument, well, you can't all be to blame, can you? Yeah, you fucking can. You fucking can. In fact, people who don't even know the person who kills themselves may be to blame. Policies, all kinds of shit can be to blame. So don't come to me with that. You can't all be to blame. Isn't it far more logical that none of you are responsible? No. We all bear shared responsibility for everything. And then they go to, well, then who is? The simple truth is that only one person is responsible for any suicide, the victim. Look, I'm not sure about that. But what I'm sure of is that there's shared responsibility, and you can't absolve everyone just because one person is maybe more responsible. And also, then they go on to another thing. Let me see. They go on to something that kind of obviates any responsibility for the victim, and this is the kind of muddled thinking. Now, muddled thinking's fine when I'm just ranting into the video, but it seems wrong in this kind of self-help thing. It's unclear how much control, if any, suicide victims have over their actions, and if clinical depression is the root, then we could easily think of suicides as victims of disease. This is why a person who dies by suicide doesn't deserve blame. However, on some level, there was a conscious choice made by that person, even if it was made with the clouded mind, so the responsibility does lie with them. Okay. Sure. Responsibility, okay. I'll live with this. I'll live with it. As long as they are a working, functional person able to make choices, yes. They made that choice, and they took it appropriately. Yeah, I'm good. I apologize to the book. Guilt is anger turned inward. Sure, but it might be rightly turned inward. Can come from unfounded assumption that others are silently blaming us. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think I'm that affected by other people. Parents of children who die by suicide often battle an added type of guilt. Even if they don't blame themselves for not directly intervening, they often feel... So I'm not feeling guilty for not intervening. In fact, had I intervened at the point at which I was aware that something was wrong, had I imagined what it was and maybe called the hospital, she probably would have been brain damaged for the rest of her life. So, no, I don't feel any guilt for that, but some perceived mistake in raising their children. Where did I go wrong? I pushed them too hard. This is the kind of thing that I feel, so what do they say about this? But parents need to remind themselves that while they had great influence over their children's lives, they do not personally create every aspect of their children's being. And yeah, obviously, from their earliest years, children are shaped by an assortment of outside influences, right? But that doesn't mean you can't feel some guilt for the issue. Spouses tend to feel acutely guilty for a suicide. The natural partnership implies a mutual responsibility to look after each other, but spouses need to realize that the root causes of suicide are beyond the control. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that there's no guilt, right? So, the weird thing here is that let's go to the responsible thing. There is only one person responsible for any suicide, the victim. This is going back to that. It's as though if you are not the person most responsible for the causes, you're completely absolved, which fits along with isn't it far more logical, you can't all be to blame, can you? Isn't it far more logical that none of you are responsible? No, everyone is responsible, but there's a primary responsibility, and it feels like a fuzzy kind of thinking to me, to use the word in this way. But anyway, okay, the next one. I'm glad they did it. Though rarely expressed aloud, many survivors feel a measure of relief, especially when the suicide victim's emotional battles were well known to them and punctuated with traumatic episodes and suicide attempts. To breathe easier because they and you are now spared from future torment is understandable. However, such feelings of relief are usually followed by a rush of guilt. So, I kind of feel this, in the sense that I am glad she was able to end her suffering. I'm saddened that, for, again, the selfish reasons, that I am not, that I've lost out on something that I valued. Even if it wasn't, a hugely fantastic thing for me. Us being together was better than us not for me. There is another aspect of I am glad she did it, in that I'm glad she died before me, because I honestly, one of my biggest worries is what happens. I was significantly older. I still am. Old enough to have been her parent, and I don't think, I just don't know that she could have managed the house, life, my chaotic finances, which, are in good shape. It's just, they would have been difficult to piece together. I did try to make it clear to her where there was a lot of money that she could get her hands on real easily if she needed to. But yeah, there's quite a bit that, enough, if she needed, let's say I died in the next few years, it would have been hard, I think, financially to survive off of everything. I'm not sure. But anyway, uh, that that is another side of it. Moving forward with your life brings its own dose of guilt, whether it's returning to the simple routine. Uh, how can I live knowing they're not there? Uh, I don't really feel that. Um, I feel more of a why bother, but that's different. I mean, the why bother was there anyway. Mistaken assumptions. I know why they did it. Well, I kind of feel like I do. They say that can add to your own pain. Not terribly. If anything, it gives me some relief to have. If they are mistaken assumptions, I'm happier with that than the idea that, like, the other ideas that I had before thinking suicide. If only I'd done X, they'd still be alive. No, but there are maybes, like, but I don't know. It's their wife's parents' doctor's fault, maybe. I mean, her mom was hell for her in many ways, just gave her a horrible childhood. But I know what people think about me. Yeah, I actually really don't, and I don't think it's negative. I mean, some of you do. I can tell that, but I will never be able to enjoy life again. No, I think I will be able to enjoy it very much as I have in the past, which is to say, my comfort levels are going to go down. I'm not going to have that, that little bit of chatting every day or whatever. On the other hand, I wasn't really enjoying life anyhow, and I'm still not, and I won't be. Okay. How far are we? Supposedly 7 more pages, but... So these are going into specifics. Anger and blame. I think these are going to be going into more detail on these issues than I want to cope with. Special circumstances, they touch on spouses. And again, they're basically saying the same kind of stuff they were before. The public suicide. Oh, that's an interesting one. Oh, wait, suicide witnesses. If you actually saw your loved one die by suicide or discovered the body, you face an additional pain and shock of that experience. Often the horrible vision of their final physical injury haunts us. Yes. But, and then they say a photo of memory or even a funeral viewing may help replace the one with the one that reflects your loved one was. There was something actually very sweet about to me. I liked it. I thought there was something pretty about it. I mean, I didn't want to touch her body. It was just a dead body at that point. But I don't need to see her. I can also remember not long before just hugging her and feeling how weak and small she was. Something that always shocked me. Always shocked me. I'm not used to such small things. The public suicide. This was not, but I'm kind of curious if you face this situation, make sure you enlist the services of an attorney. I don't know why. Probably because they make a mess. Accused. Sometimes they face more than the judgment of others. They face accusations of responsibility, possibly from authorities. Police are compelled to treat any apparent suicide as murder until facts are ascertained. If an unfortunate clouding of facts makes you a genuine suspect, make sure you have an attorney. Yeah, I mean, this was my first reaction was that, wow, what the hell? She died for no reason. That's pretty suspicious. And I was very, very, guarded in some ways when dealing with the police because of that. Well, for me, you know, ow, fuck. Okay, my back did not like that. Acceptance is the key to healing, but is deceptively simple concept. First of all, most of us operate under the assumption that we are already accepting the suicide, okay? After all, only a deluded few would fail to believe that the event actually happened. That's acceptance, isn't it? Yeah, that's what I'm trying to find out here. It may be the beginnings of acceptance, but it's not the entire understanding. Accepting a suicide means not only acknowledging the basic reality, but accepting the contributing factors and the ramifications of it, without embellishing them with invented ideas, either positive or negative. For example, you might have to accept that your loved one lost a very long battle with depression. If you were to embellish this reality either positively by denying the fact that such a severe emotional illness could have existed within them, or negatively by unfairly holding yourself responsible for not having cured them of it, then you're not truly accepting the suicide for what it is, a tragic event that, while wholly unwelcome, was beyond the control of you or those around you. So, I don't actually view this as a tragic event. I view it as her choice, and a logical one, and one that, if I were dispassionate about the person, I would just completely accept, as that's reasonable. If I were not, from my particular point of view, yes, I have some selfish wishing she was around, but I recognize that as just my own selfish desires, and that, she made the choice she would have made, that she wanted to make. Then they go through a bunch of myths, and they've got things like, I should have seen this coming. I kind of did. That's the whole point. Even before, I'm not sure about that. But from the moment that she seemed really dumb, I totally was expecting her to be dead. I mean, not in the sense of like willing to violate her privacy by bursting in on her or something, but yeah, I was well, let's go through some of these. It was my fault that this happened. I feel like we dealt with that already. If I'd managed to stop this attempt, they would have been okay. No, I mean, no, they were not okay. She was alive. She couldn't be okay. The person I lost is a horrible person for having done this. No, not at all. In some ways, her disassociation with me, or from me towards the end, actually helped. And by towards the end, I mean the last couple of weeks. I think once she made the decision, she had a tendency to withdraw into herself when she was facing things that were difficult, and it helped both of us, I think, to accept it. The person I lost was a saint who could never do any wrong. Their answer is, the person I lost made a tragic, regrettable choice to end their life. She did lots of things that were not great. But I mean, she was one of the less harmful people that I've ever dealt with in my life. In terms of I feel like there was no spite there. There was more just an acceptance of the misery. I talked about I should have seen this coming, I mean, and going back even further, I would try. I would try to let her know. Look, if you're gonna kill yourself, just don't fucking leave me a mess, uh, because I can't cope with that. And while she left a dead body there and a little bit of pain, honestly, it's no worse than jumping off a bridge or something in terms of a mess. So I I can't blame her on that. I can never be happy again. Was I ever happy? I don't know. Yes, but not long term. A few months at most, maybe, at any time. I should have been able to save them now. Moving on. Life goes on. Time heals. Tomorrow's another day. If you haven't already, you will likely be offered these, and they make you want to scream. Comes from a reluctance to see our lives move past the tragedy, as if continuing to live is an affront to the memory of a lost loved one. No, that's not how I feel. I feel like, yeah, life goes on, time heals, but, those aren't necessarily good things. Conversely, one shouldn't try to move on until truly ready to. Trying to bravely push aside your feelings of grief and pain will only prolong them. So this is kind of a weird thing. I don't want to take time off work because work helps me bury this, helps me hide from it. That's how I cope with stuff. If I dwell on it, I will dwell on it for the rest of time. I did that for months when my first wife threw me out. It was only by finding other things to do and to hide from the pain that, I overcame it. That doesn't mean that pain wasn't still there. It's still there with me now. I still feel it. I still let it out. I still touch it. But I don't fetishize it the way I did initially, and I think that's probably the best. I think the best is to take it out and play with it when you want the pain. When should we start getting on with life? The answer is different for each of us. First and foremost, it's essential we confront the confusing and troubling emotions that suicide has left us. Some may come to a reasoned and accepted understanding of their tragedy within a few months, but most will take a year to get through the toughest part and a year or two more to be ready to live again. I feel like I'm ready to live again. I don't feel like I have the opportunity. I don't feel significantly different from when she was still here. Where I also felt I had the opportunity, or I had the willingness and readiness to live again, but not the opportunity. It's a good idea to refrain from making any major life decisions in the first year. Yeah. I don't imagine making any major life decisions in any time until forced to. However, life has a way of moving us forward, ready or not. New events and happenings unfold, new faces enter our lives. Yeah, I'm really worried that I might lose my job and not be able to keep this house and have to move somewhere else to work. That would be devastating, not because this is the house she and I were in, but because even before that I had made my decision. This is where I die. This is where I want my end to be, not in some, dramatic or rapid fashion. I am near a nexus that I like, and this is this was the right place in a lot of ways. It's not the right place in terms of socializing with people. It's not the right place in terms of ease of access to shopping, in terms of being able to go swimming every day, in terms of good weather that makes me less unhappy. It's just the right place for me. It's the right place for me to enter my continuing to decline, as it were. And I knew that already. This was not a matter of like, oh, she's dead now, let me just fade away. No, I was in that process already. The process of slowly dying. But you will never leave the memory of your loved ones behind any more than you can take their physical being with you. With time and healing, you'll be able to cherish fond memories. You know, it's a funny thing. The memories do fade. They're always there, like I said, but neither the good nor the bad is as sharp as it once was, and I assume that'll happen the same with her, although there's very little of either. The Suicide Survivor's Affirmation. Someone I love very much has ended their own life. I will never truly know all that has happened in their mind. If they were here, even they could not fully explain. In their state of mind, they could not comprehend the reality of their death. They could not have appreciated the devastating impact their suicide had on the people of their life. You know, I would actually say none of those are true. And that we had these discussions previously throughout our relationship. Maybe not in the depth necessary to fully explain everything, but I think had I tried, we could have gotten there. As such, the act, the person I lost is beyond my help in every way but one. I can help them by working to ease the pain they have caused, and by not allowing their most enduring legacy to be one of tragedy. Yeah, I don't know. As a result, for each and every day, I can help the person I lost by enjoying life, smiling and laughing, not dwelling in feelings of sadness or remorse, loving others, taking new steps in life toward positive new horizons, helping those who feel they're lost to do the same, and in short, not letting their mistake continue to create sorrow. You know, to whatever extent I can, yeah, if anything, her not being here frees me a little bit. Not much. A little bit. Which is to say that, honestly, you know, I was probably free to pursue relationships or anything like that as much as I would want. There might have been some internal unwillingness. Then they give support groups, which I was hoping there was something local listed here. There's a list of local things that they gave me as well. This is a national book, I guess. But I don't know that they're specific about suicide. And I think I might actually take some enjoyment out of at least trying, you know, a meeting. But there's no fucking way that I'm going to pay to be part of something right away, you know, or pay for a psychiatrist or something along those lines. I'm just not into that. They don't help. And that's about it. And again, you know, I understand the desire to help people that this gives. Let me... Fuck. Oh, my back. Let me get the camera up so I can... Oh, shit. Yeah, this isn't good. Lying down on my side was not the right move. Let me cut the camera. Okay, we'll try a little bit more. Oh boy, does this hurt. Ow. Yeah, I should have thunk before I tried that, but honestly, neither of my batteries charge fast enough, and the damn camera eats them so quickly. My old camera did. So, overall, I don't know. This might be of a great deal of use to people who are less in touch with their own suicidal thoughts. I've lived with this shit, as did my wife, for all of our adult lives, where the worthlessness, the misery has existed as the main current of life. And the thing is, the silly little things, the funny things that that we would say to one another, the nice moments of seeing, for her, seeing her see, for me, the little fuzzy animals outside, these kind of were just so small compared to the aches and pains and difficulties of just a normal life. I mean, not that we managed that, right? But I would assume even the normal life for the normal person is so fucking oppressive, and it just looks so out of reach in so many ways. The amount of pain involved for me, for example, in making a phone contact, and I've brought this up in some of the other things, to try to get a repair done. And then when I finally did it, so this is the most fucked up shit. So like, I found on the first year I was here a couple of people who would do things, who did work for me. Maybe I was more energized then, whatever. But one of them moved. The other one basically was like, no, you need to get that repaired, this with the chimney, I need to get it repaired, not just cleaned. And I haven't been able to get that off my to-do list of, just tons of shit that needs to get done. But yeah, my roof cleaner moved to Portland, and I took a year off from him because I did it myself, because it had been so much money when he did the moss removal, that I was like, well, I'll just do this every couple of years instead. But he was a good guy, and the first year was much cheaper. And when I contacted him, he was like, no, I've moved. So I went and looked for someone, found someone, which was not easy because most people don't respond by email. But I actually managed to find one after spending a couple hours trying to contact people and everything. And the guy came out and he's like, oh no, nobody would go up on your roof. What the hell? And the best he could suggest is there might be somebody I can find on Reddit, and he kind of gave me maybe an idea of the guy's name or something. But he was supposed to contact me back, and he didn't. And it's just, that's the kind of shit that happens in my life. Like I reached out to my realtor with an email. Hey, do you have any people who I can work with? Again, no response at all. And it's just, I'm used to that shit. I'm used to being the ignored and the incapable of being satisfied by this society. From the point where I had trouble going up, to the counter at a McDonald's to ask for ketchup. And I still kind of do, but glad they put it over on the side now, and you don't have to go ask. To just so many different layers of the tiniest little burdens in life. Every little thing adds up, right? It's not like there's this suitcase of tragedies that you're collecting. It's that life itself is made up of this misery. The basic pattern of existence is not pleasant. The best it can be is a hiding from it. Whether that's reading books or getting drunk or playing video games or whatever, the best there is to hide from the reality, right? And that's not taking any of the great tragedies into account. Those are just like these huge inflection points of wow, not only does life fucking miserable to begin with, but it gets a whole lot worse for periods of time, you know? And I mean, that's what this is. This is just one of, and I can kind of laugh about the really miserable stuff, and in some ways I function well under it, you know? When sometimes when things are at their worst, I actually am able to operate at a better level of effectiveness because I know it will end. You know, it's like it's similar to taking a trip. You know, if I take a trip to another city or whatever, I'm willing to spend money on like restaurants and stuff because this isn't the everyday situation. So when there's chaos, when there's great disruption, that leaves me some opportunity to cope that's actually better than the day-to-day misery. It's that day-to-day misery. It's the actual existence of life. It is the fabric of my existence that is miserable and not worth having. Not those punctuated little tragedies. Anyway. What is to be gained and lost from this? Most of you probably have dropped off by the end or jumped to the end to find this out. Not much, you know. I'm who I am. I'm not going to be able to off myself, and I think that I can handle this shit better than I can handle my day-to-day reality. Better than I can deal with just the slow decay that life is. That's the problem, not the great miseries, but the fact that life is just made up of nothing but little miseries. All right, let's send it up.